Welcome back to the Paranorm Girl podcast. I am your host, Kristen. On today's final deep dive of the season, we end our exploration where a lot of people often launch their own. Curiosity is piqued in someone. They may start nosing about the information available, and then, as skeptical or open-minded as they may be, they stumble upon a theory that explains the Bigfoot phenomenon that they can really sink their teeth into. And they're hooked. Landing on the theory that clicks is a major reason there are two camps when it comes to Bigfoot. The biological, flesh and blood, undiscovered ape, or the dreaded woo. The mystery explained with another mystery. The illogical, the pathetic, the paranormal woo. And perhaps you out there listening have already made your decision. You've heard what you needed to hear in your own dive into the subject. You're all set, and nothing can change your mind. But then I have to question why you listen to my show, a show for the skeptical believer. We are open-minded and all ears over here. We want to see and consider all of the evidence before we arrive at a conclusion, no matter what that might look like. Unfortunately, disappointingly, this has not been the case for most of the information I have reviewed regarding the Bigfoot field and its enthusiasts. The two camps are widely divided. On one hand, a physical specimen that leaves behind physical evidence does make sense. But then, where do they disappear to so quickly? What had to occur for the trail of footprints to suddenly stop? And why haven't we, since Burns first put the word Sasquatch into print and brought this concept into our mainstream consciousness, found one damn body? Just one. Native lore attributes a lot of physical characteristics to this creature. The size, the hair, the stench. But it is also almost complemented by the lore that calls it a forest spirit, one who walks between our world and the spirit realm. Whatever it was real to them. That part wasn't questioned. And in our modern accounts, no matter whether it's footprints, rocks thrown, a sighting of them through the trees, or giving and receiving gifts, your batteries draining in their presence, or hearing messages via mind speak, the creature is just as real for these experiencers. Today, we will dig into as many of the theories and explanations for Bigfoot that I could find, listen to a couple of accounts, look at evidence for all, including the stranger, more inexplicable side to the phenomenon. Let's start in the more classic camp that is indeed biological in nature. Lots of evidence for this. The most accepted physical explanation is that Sasquatch is a surviving population of a genus of ape long thought to have gone extinct 300,000 years ago called Gigantopithecus. This very real creature is believed to be the largest ape that has ever lived, with heights estimated up to 10 feet tall when standing upright, and weighing as much as 1,200 pounds. For reference, a fully grown male gorilla can weigh between 300 to 500 pounds and stand at 6 feet tall. It was robust in size, though thought to be vegetarian. Though scientists have not yet discovered a full skeleton of this ape, plenty has been discovered regarding how it looked, what it ate, and when it lived, easily deduced from the fossils we have located. Primarily teeth, but also pieces of jawbone discovered in Asia in 1930. Chinese apothecaries were selling them as dragon bones to be used for medicine. Oh, and by the way, it lived between 2 million to 300,000 years ago, existed for 1.7 million years, but we haven't found a skeleton. Weird stuff, right? Another interesting fact about Gigantopithecus: it lived alongside human beings. It's actually speculated that early humans, possibly along with climate change, were responsible for this massive ape going extinct. Some people speculate that. But some people speculate this creature did not go extinct. It's alive and well in the dense forests of America and Canada, having crossed the Bering Land Bridge, same as humans and many other animals, in search of food, new habitat, or general migration. Grover Krantz was a huge proponent of this Giganto-Sasquatch theory. There are many photos of a recreation of its skull that he made based just on the mouthpieces that we had discovered. And he seemed to think his end result was pretty dang accurate, if not right on the money. You know that song, the knee bone's connected to the thigh bone's connected to the... Yeah. Based on the teeth size and the way they would sit in the jaw led to the mandible, which would have had to sit in a certain way because of muscle attachments and symmetry. And due to this, he was able to fashion the rest of the jaw, which led him to an estimation of a very strong masseter muscle, which required the cheekbones to be a certain way. And then the nasal cavity and the eye sockets and the cranium. And based on the way this cranium would have sat on a spine, he was able to suggest it was possible to likely this creature stood and mobilized in an upright fashion, bipedally, which is very interesting considering, as far as we know, walking bipedally is classified as a solely human trait. And then, considering the size and shape of the skull, how it sat on the body, how the body would have moved, it was pretty easily ascertained how the body likely would have looked, down to its ankle position on its gigantic feet. All of this information learned from teeth. So cool. Now, Krantz did not suggest this theory. He wasn't even the first to attempt a reconstruction of a Gigantopithecus skull. Back in the 50s, Bernard Heuvelmans, founding figure of cryptozoology, would suggest a connection between this creature and the, at the time, too hot to print Himalayan Yeti. And in the late 60s, it was John Green who would be the first to make the same connection with our own local celebrity monster. And also in the 60s, a Dr. Wu would be the first to try his hand at molding what this thing's skull looked like. While Wu's and Krantz's versions were similar, there were just a few distinctions, nothing to make or break the general visualization of this ape. But what Krantz did, though, was create his recreation of the Giganto skull based solely on science, measurements, living ape examples, and his knowledge of bones and anatomy and how it all has to work together, all at a time it could be compared to descriptions of a presumably living descendant of said giant ape. Krantz, of course, never saw a Bigfoot himself, but he would show Bob Titmus, who at the time had several sightings, and would say it was pretty dang spot on. With one exception, being the creature he saw had eyes that were much farther apart. So keep that in mind if you do go take a look at a picture of Krantz's Giganto skull, and if you yourself believe you have had a sighting. It's not 100%, but according to at least Titmus, pretty close. So if you have had the experience, you can be the judge of that as well. Krantz's reconstruction of this skull would help cement this giganto idea in the minds of many, from scientists and researchers to lay people and experiencers who to this day cannot deny that Sasquatch is real, yet cannot accept that it is anything but biological. However, there are folks out there who just do not buy the Gigantopithecus theory. That is too far-fetched. That creature is long gone, long extinct, and it's too hard to imagine that Bigfoot started in Asia, but just happened across the Bering Land Bridge, make its way down through Canada, and set up shop in the Pacific Northwest. Too much. But it is undeniably an animal, dang it. Some believe Sasquatch to simply be an undiscovered ape. Lots of animals, large ones too, weren't discovered for a very long time, were considered the works of fiction and lore by the locals. Gorillas, giant squid, saola. Bigfoot is nothing more than a small surviving population of North America's very own version of an orangutan. And it's just a matter of time before we officially discover it. Could be. Very well could be. And then you have the flesh and blooders who cannot buy either of those. Many stories out there that repeat the same sentiment: I couldn't shoot, it looked too human. Or Native Americans who called Sasquatch another tribe, forest people. Or experiencers who can't buy it's an animal because it was too intelligent, human-level intelligent. Could they be right? Are Bigfoot just a tribe of people? Wild people who evolved differently? That would certainly explain the bipedalism in this case, and how they seem to outwit researchers at every turn. And, whatever your feelings about the Sasquatch Genome Project, one of the consistent findings in their DNA samples tested was an undetermined DNA source in addition to human DNA. The skeptical consensus was that was due to human collector contamination, but what if it wasn't? Some of the stranger actions they take we can also recognize as very human-like. A verbal language has not just been reported, but recorded. Listen to the Sierra sounds. I don't understand the conversation that is taking place, if that is what's happening, if it's a language, but whatever it is, it does sound like inflection, emotion, a grouping of meaning of some sort to the parties on those tapes. Or how about gifting? That's debatable. Ravens will gift with you. Hell, your cat will gift you, want it or not. But not a majority of animals do this. And the ones that do, we can imagine there to be a primal drive to do so, perhaps. In many habituation reports where they claim to have made gifting a regular, repeatable occurrence, there does seem to be a real level of give and take with these creatures. There's some thought and purpose behind it. Or how about the creation of art? Now, I don't think I have heard anyone else bring this up in regards to stick structures. Perhaps it's just for nesting purposes, for location purposes. Maybe they're imitating the building of teepees from the natives they used to coexist with long ago, and now they don't even know why they do it. It's just what their parents before them taught them to do, just like any chimpanzee passing down a pattern or tool usage, something like that. Or maybe they like doing it. Maybe it's fun to make shapes out of sticks, to make something out of nothing. Sasquatch art. So, there are some of the biological flesh and blood options for you. I'm sure there are many more I haven't come across, but let's shift gears and spend a little more time across the aisle. Let us step into the woo. Now, as a paranormal podcaster, with a paranormal show and personal paranormal experiences in my own life, I am shocked I made it this far without going heavily into this side of it. Everything I have learned about this side, I find fascinating. I don't know if I buy any one theory over any other just yet, but there is something riveting about these types of accounts and theories and the possibility that there is something quite a bit more mysterious and otherworldly going on with these creatures. One more thing before we launch into it. I have so much respect for the scientists and educators and researchers who have taken it upon themselves to procure, process, and translate the evidence of an undiscovered physical creature and then provide that evidence in a way the rest of us can understand and somewhat swallow as legitimate. I appreciate almost the the safety of being able to stay in the realm of known reality. I sincerely do. However, if I have learned anything in this 3.5 year long education of the paranormal and what does it all mean and is it real, it's this. Reality does not always work the way it has been programmed to work, the way we have been led to believe that it does. I have firsthand knowledge of this, and I cannot unknow that, you know? That being said, I really do identify as a skeptic. And what I mean by that is if there is a situation or a story or whatever that I don't personally know is true or false, I remain in this unknown camp until I have listened to all sides and have gathered what I consider to be enough evidence in order to arrive at my opinion of what I think happened. And sometimes the stories I hear and that evidence is not convenient, but it is undeniable. What I have found time after time has contradicted what I thought was possible. And it is saying something. There is a whole other side to people's experiences with Bigfoot that is being left on the table because it's too weird. It falls outside of what we currently think we know is real. Krantz would call these people kooks and discount their stories right away, would not even consider it. It's a very, I'm right because obviously I'm right, and your story isn't true because it just can't be true, period. And this is a fine place to stand if the accounts that come through featuring some form of woo were random, infrequent outliers. But the deal is, they're not. There's a lot of them, actually. Traits, behaviors, and events that have been reported that have led some to believe that these creatures are something far more than just an animal include mind speak and telepathy, cloaking or the ability to suddenly appear and disappear, shape-shifting or abilities to transform themselves and the environment around them, light and electrical manipulation via psychic abilities, bioluminescence, taser or stun capabilities on others, glowing eyeballs, long lines of footprints that suddenly just stop, and psychic influence over people's decisions and emotions. Based on these kinds of reports, let's look at the theories. Theory number 1, Bigfoot is an alien, is in cahoots with aliens, or was created or bred by aliens. There seems to be a link between UFOs and Sasquatch, and this link can be seen especially in Pennsylvania in 1973. Residents and UFO researchers there experienced a high amount of UFO sightings that year, and this is what is called a UFO flap. Flaps are already strange in and of themselves, but what made this even stranger was the odd consistency of folks reporting that they were also seeing big, tall, hairy, humanoid creatures in the vicinity as well. Stan Gordon, who was investigating those reports during this time, he began to pick up on this correlation and has talked extensively about it. He is likely the man we can credit with bringing this possible connection into the mainstream. And we'll talk about Stan more in just a moment. One really interesting case that he discussed on the Creepy Side of NEPA podcast last year took place in Western PA on October 25th. Around 15 people at a farm watched a large, bright red light descend toward a nearby pasture. The son of the farmer, along with 2 boys, jumped in a truck and headed to where it looked like the thing might have landed. As they got close, the son noticed the headlights kind of flicker and dim. Not unusual activity for a UFO sighting. They parked the vehicle and walked to a close observation point on top of a hill. They would describe the luminous object as 100 feet in diameter, dome-shaped and brightly lit, illuminating the surrounding area. Checks out. They also said it was making a sound like a lawnmower, which is a little odd. Most UFOs are reported to be absolutely silent. However, over the sound of the object, they could also hear what sounded like a screaming or just strange noises. They looked towards movement that they could see along the edge of the field, and by the light of the sphere could make out two ape-like creatures. One stood 7 feet tall and the other 8 feet tall. Both were covered in long dark hair. Both had glowing green eyes. They were making some very odd sounds, back and forth, communicating something to one another, and upon noticing the witnesses, began slowly walking towards them. At this, the farmer's son shot a warning shot from his rifle over the creatures' heads. Undeterred, they continued walking toward them. The farmer's son then shot 3 rounds into the taller of the creatures. At this moment, the glowing object disappeared, and the 2 creatures slowly walked away, disappearing into the nearby woods. There is a lot going on in the story. It touches on the UFO link. Doesn't seem like the creatures were surprised by the presence of the sphere. It touches upon the oft-reported glowing eyes. It's usually red, so the green is an interesting detail. It also touches on their imperviousness to bullets. That's also a trait reported by folks who ultimately don't think it's too human to shoot. A lot more stories just like that, well, maybe less dramatic than this, were reported in PA, especially around the Chestnut Ridge area. Stan Gordon, then the go-to researcher over there, then at that time, would of course come to believe there was an undeniable link between Bigfoot and UFOs because of the multitude of cases that he was getting, constantly reporting just that scenario. He would also come to believe, in regards to both Bigfoot and UFOs, there was a physical and non-physical component to these events. And funny enough, that does play into my own surmisings and conclusions with UAP and aliens. Check out the season 5 finale, link below. And Dr. Paul Johnson, who would later take over the Pennsylvania Center for UFO Research, Stan's old group, would also come to this conclusion. He would take it the step further, introducing the concept of a quantum Bigfoot. Stan Gordon would later be responsible for bringing this idea of a quantum or interdimensional Bigfoot to the public. So UFOs are connected to Sasquatch, and Sasquatch are interdimensional creatures. Two of the top woo Bigfoot theories, thanks to Stan Gordon. Damn. There are slight variations in all of this. It gets a little murky, but if you think about it, it shouldn't be that surprising that some folks have come to agree with Stan and Dr. Johnson. It is easier to believe that Bigfoot must somehow be connected to UFOs if you have a sighting of both, or you already believe UFOs to be a real phenomenon, or you too can see the pattern of these simul sighting reports. It is easier to believe that Bigfoot must be interdimensional, because what else explains how they somehow up and vanish, or just randomly appear? Or how their footprints suddenly stop. Where did they go? You know, how they don't seem to have to adhere to our physical world the way that we do, such as being affected at all by 3 rounds to the chest. Did the bullets go right through them? Do they experience pain where they're from? Another variation tied up in the UFO connection brings it back to the theory that they are some version of human. This time, having been the early dry run and rough drafts of alien hybrid programs in hopes of creating the perfect worker bees to mine the planet's resources. But then regular humans were created, and the aliens said, nah, why have that when we've just created this fleshy masterpiece? It's a whole other rabbit hole my brain cannot wrap around. Gonna leave that one to my pal Gil at Black Cat Report to tackle. You got this, buddy. I believe in you. We will move on to our other woo theories in just a moment, but I wanted to take a second to talk about glowing eyes. We are not talking about eye shine, which would be a very logical, natural feature of a nocturnal animal, and actual eye shine is reported in many nighttime reports. No, what we are talking about is glowing eyes. Like I said before, most report that they see red glowing eyes. The story I just told you reported green. In 1977, a white-eyed Bigfoot chased two teenage boys across a field near Eaton, Ohio. I have also heard of orange and yellow, all colors of the rainbow. So recently I watched a Small Town Monsters video about anomalous Sasquatch activity around Chestnut Ridge. And an investigator was telling these glowing eyes stories, and it had me thinking. The first, he said, took place outside of Luxor, where this couple had just wrapped up doing the dirty in the woods and began their walk back out when they very quickly ran into a Sasquatch on the path. All parties froze. But as the creature stared at them, the guy watched this thing's eyes as blood filled them and then began to glow. He said this thing then let out a scream that was so powerful it hit him like a sonic pulse. And at that point, someone yelled, "Scatter!" And the couple ran one way and the Bigfoot ran the other. The other story was just about this kid who was inside his house playing. He noticed movement at the window, looks up to see a Bigfoot. As it turns to look at him, the witness said once the creature's eyes landed on him, then they began to glow red. And the investigator telling the story wondered whether or not this red glow thing could be some sort of defense mechanism. And that caught my attention and got me thinking. I wonder what kinds of weird stuff other animals out there might do in self-defense. You know, is it possible glowing eyes in this animal is completely natural and explainable? And because I like to share, here's some weird stuff that I learned about very real, accepted, currently living animals. All right. So, turkey vultures literally vomit at their opponents. If I am ever single again, watch out, fellas. I've learned a thing or two. Be good, or taste my wrath. Sea cucumbers shoot their own organs through their buttholes at their predators. Show-offs. Horned lizards squirt blood out their eyeballs from up to 5 feet away. Something called the hairy frog breaks all of its own toes so it can push its jacked up bones through the skin at the tips of its fingers and use them like claws. One would think the literal hair on this frog would be the weirdest part. One would be mistaken. The cuttlefish can change the color, texture, and shape of their skin to blend into any environment. It has something called adaptive camouflage. They can look like rocks, seaweed, and even patterned chairs. Thank you, BBC, for testing that one out. So, now that we all have to know this about creatures of this planet, is it really so far-fetched that an ape could evolve glowing eyes as a defense mechanism or a way to show fear or scare potential threats, like a bluff charge or something? A sea cucumber shoots its organs like missiles of war out its own anus. Glowing ape eyes just doesn't seem so inconceivable as it used to be. Ghosts. What people are seeing when they witness a Sasquatch is a ghost or a spirit. This is a relatively fringe concept, even in the world of fringe. But this theory proposes that we are not dealing with a physical being at all, thus explaining why no bones or bodies have ever been found, how they are so successfully elusive, how they move so quickly and reportedly like they are gliding through the trees, and why they have so often been reported alongside other anomalous phenomena like orbs and other strange lights. Another case from 73 out of PA took place on a September night when two girls were waiting in a rural area for a ride back to their home when suddenly they saw an 8-foot tall, white, hairy creature with red eyes walking through the woods carrying a luminous sphere in its hands. What the hell is going on over in Pennsylvania, by the way, dudes? But anyway, kind of ghostly, anomalous light could be a good example of the Bigfoot is but a spirit paranormal theory. It is French, but various cultures, various native legends speak of Sasquatch as a spirit of the forest. This theory says it is not, nor ever has been, a biological entity. It's an interesting concept to toy with, I suppose. I don't think it can explain the loads of evidence it leaves behind, but it is still fun to think about. All right. Our final two theories begs your open mind, especially if you have never heard these before. Because these two theories do not just require that you believe Bigfoot is real and is not a biological creature. It also requires that you believe the stories of the Bible or the Quran. First up, Bigfoots are the descendants of the Nephilim. The Nephilim are a race of giants mentioned in the Old Testament. They are described as the offspring of angels and human women. Their ungodly union resulted in this race of giants, the Nephilim. This theory suggests the Nephilim survived the events that supposedly led to their downfall, like a flood, and would continue to exist, hidden away in remote or isolated areas like forests and mountains. They were described as powerful and, in some interpretations, malevolent. Compared to Bigfoot's physical descriptions, like size and height, behavioral descriptions such as reclusiveness and intelligence, and at times, as we've recently learned, aggression and car chasing, could Bigfoot be the echo of these ancient, half-human, half-angel giants? Last theory. Bigfoot are jinn. Now, this one intrigues me. I haven't thought about these entities in a hot minute. Talked about them briefly during my season on Shadow People. Said I'd come back to it someday. Didn't imagine that someday would have anything to do with Sasquatch, but here we are. So the idea goes like this. I said before that Bigfoot are these entities, not entirely accurate. The theory says that Bigfoot would be the manifestation of jinn. What is a jinn? They are supernatural entities. While God made angels from light and humans from clay, he fashioned jinn from smokeless fire. They can live for thousands of years. They have many of the same advantages of humans, such as free will, ability to procreate, to form communities and have families and love. They exist in a parallel dimension. And while they are usually invisible to humans, their interactions with us can be significant, as they also have the ability to appear however they wish to either help or deceive humankind. They can become invisible on a dime. They are versatile, intelligent, cunning, powerfully strong, and with their free will have the choice of benevolence or malevolence when interacting with humankind. It's a lot of belief hopping for me to make this one fit. I still find the concept very interesting, but man, have we come a long way from the almost simple idea at this point in the show that Bigfoot is just an undiscovered animal. It's a lot. We have to consider, though, the huge number of accounts from folks who witness the anomalous within their encounters with Sasquatch, where it is undoubtedly more than an encounter with a forest critter, who claim when Bigfoot came around, the batteries in their equipment suddenly drained or their car turned off, who claim that Bigfoot was accompanied by strange lights in the sky and seemed to disappear off the face of the planet when they stepped behind a tree, who speak to them in their mind and gift with them and live in the forests around their properties for generations and have glowing eyes. Are these people all just crazy? End of story? Or are we unwilling to even listen to the anomalous details and theories because we have already decided they can't possibly be true, rather than asking, well, what if? Personally, I'm certainly willing to remain open for the time being. We have got season finale up next, and I've got a lot of work ahead of me. Next few weeks will be spent going over what I have already talked at length about and diving into any facets of the subject that didn't quite make it into the season. And then I'll let you know. I'll let you know where I land. But for now, let's wrap this baby up. Join me for a final note. Y'all, before you write me off as a crazy quackadoodle regarding Sasquatch, I will have you know that I am a deception expert. I know when my leg's being pulled. I'm an actor. My fib radar is on point. And truly, the only good thing that came from being an actor all those years. Episode 5 on Beer, Booze, and Boogeymen was excellente. It went so well up until YouTube literally had a stroke and booted our fine butts, along with a lot of other live streamers, off our stream. Gave us the old Irish exit right in the midst of hearing an amazing story about Sasquatch, our first, by the way, on the show, and his glowing appendage. Not eyes. It was wild, and I loved every minute of this story. Come to find out, though, the audience might not have gotten the entire thing, so we left you on a bit of a cliffhanger there. We do apologize, but never fear. Because we are true professionals over at 3B, we, of course, kept recording. Got a couple more stories in and finished our episode the right way. The replay of the entire thing will be up on my channels next week. But back to my fib radar for a second. So the topic of episode 5 was wildest story, whether true or false. Then let the panel decide. And then the caller reveals whether we were right or not. It was fun. We made a drinking game out of it. I guessed all of the stories right. I got them all right. Even in the face of adversity and opposite opinion, I got them all, man. I won. Truth or trash. It's been weeks since this show, and I'm still friggin' giddy about it, okay? In other 3B news, episode 6 will be streaming July 6th. The show is called Conspiracies on Tap. Gotta stick with the booze and beer theme. Yes, Conspiracies on Tap. Call in with your favorite conspiracy theory. Let's discuss it. I will be interested to see if I say more than 2 words during the entire show. I do not know my conspiracies whatsoever, but the rest of the booze crew does. And I am excited to hear what they bring and excited to hear what our callers bring. On the DL, Joey has made a special request for moon conspiracies. Pass it on. And be sure you tune in July 6th on the Paranormal Girl Pod YouTube channel. Bring your favorite drink. Tinfoil hats required. See you there. If you are enjoying this program, appreciate all the excess research and unnecessary quirks and you want more, you want to go to the next level of our relationship, consider becoming a patron of the show. Tiers from $1 to $10. When you join, expect early ad-free access, backstage guest chats, patron-exclusive content, and stories that do not make it into the regular show, updates and blooper reels, merch, and more. Find it only on patreon.com/paranormgirlpod. Another way to support is by following on social and subscribing on YouTube at paranormgirlpod. It is a small action to take that sure means a lot to me. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and stay tuned. The season 6 finale is almost upon us. But until then, stay safe, keep the nightlight on, and sleep with one eye open.